It is my absolute pleasure to have Ashley Faus on the show. Ashley is one of the most multidimensional product marketers in the industry. She's head of Lifecycle Marketing at Atlassian, where she works across the entire Atlassian suite of products. She's also the author of a new book, Human-Centered Marketing: How to Connect with Audiences in the Age of AI, which introduces 3 powerful frameworks that help marketers build trust, attract and convert, and even retain customers in an era where AI is reshaping how people consume information. Her work has been featured in Time, Forbes, The Next Web, Content Marketing Institute, and she's spoken on major global conference stages from Inbound to Marketing Profs. And of course, Ashley is well known for her personal motto: marketer, writer, speaker by day, singer, actor, fitness fiend by night. You guys, she brings strategy, creativity, and pure energy to every corner of her work. Ashley, it's amazing to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I feel like I need to have you narrate whenever I go places and just be like, this is Ashley. You have so much passion in your voice. It makes me very happy.
I'm such a natural hype man. I'm like, let's go. So thank you. Okay, let's dive right in because we have such a great topic today. I can't imagine anyone would not know this, certainly the PMMs who are in the more B2B space, but just to get everyone on the same page, what is Atlassian exactly?
So, this is the hardest question of the whole podcast, right? Can I do the messaging and positioning effectively for my own company? But no, we are a collaboration software on a mission to unleash the potential of every team. And you were probably familiar with most of our products, but big products like Jira, Confluence, Trello, and Loom are probably most relevant to this audience.
Totally. I think I've used absolutely every single one of those products. And it's funny, I bet a lot of professionals out there don't even realize that what they're using is an Atlassian product. So I'm sure everyone has at least touched the product before and maybe didn't even know it. Today's conversation is around creating product launch tiering and how to support even the tiniest launches or releases. And this is honestly potentially one of the biggest ways that a product marketer can truly drive trust but with the relationship with PM. So for the first segment of our show, I want to start with a case study for how you and the PMMs over at Atlassian solved this challenge. So I guess tell us more about what was going on at Atlassian, just kind of with your overall environment when you and the PMM team decided that maybe there needed to be a change with how you guys look at product launch tiers.
So Atlassian has grown a lot over its 25-year history. I've actually been at Atlassian for a little over 8 years. I've worked across a number of different teams, including our product marketing team. And so as you can imagine, over that time, between acquisitions, sunsetting products, bringing new features to market that actually turned out to be so robust that, hey, we need to expand them and turn them into products, it was a lot. And one of the values at Atlassian is be the change you seek. And so the good news with that is that people are empowered to solve problems. The kind of neutral news with that is that sometimes it means that folks might be solving the same problem that someone else is solving. And so we have a ton of really smart product marketers at Atlassian. And so they realize hey, this is a problem. We need to solve it. We need to have these launch tiers. We can't put 100% effort and go full force, both from an internal capacity standpoint and from an audience fatigue standpoint and market fatigue standpoint, right? So budget, resources, and of course the audience gets fatigued. So we had a number of different tiering frameworks floating around. Some folks called them gold, silver, bronze. Other people had sailing metaphors or, diving metaphors, swimming metaphors. Some people just called them 1, 2, and 3, right? But we didn't have shared criteria. We didn't have shared language in terms of how we define a tier 1 launch. In some cases, people had 5 tiers, others had 3 tiers, so we couldn't totally agree on exactly how many tiers we needed. And then we couldn't agree on the tactics necessarily for each launch. And so we were just seeing a lot of silos and misaligned incentives and definitions. And obviously from a product management standpoint, they're seeing their peers in other teams or other products getting a certain level of support. And they're like, why didn't I get that?
Why can't I have that?
Right?
Yeah.
How come so-and-so got this for their tier 3 launch and I didn't for my bronze launch? And it's the list of tactics and the criteria are not aligned between someone else's tier 3 and our bronze, which in theory should be the same. So that was a big thing. And obviously when we got a new CMO, she saw this and really was like, hey, let's do some, leadership alignment on this to make sure that we have the right criteria and the right tactics, and then that this gets shared broadly.
That's really helpful. Yes. And I feel like I've been there where, especially even at a really big organization, where things have just changed since the original framework was put in place, and you acquire new companies and you, as you said, sunset products. And so I could see that opportunity for a realignment of tiering. So then help us understand, I guess, like, what was your action or the team's action when it was like, okay, we need to rebuild the tiering? How does that work? Like, where did you guys get started with, like, I guess, like, just getting right to work on building out those tiers?
Yeah. So the first thing, and this is advice for, anyone who's looking to do this, is to do an audit. Go find all of the different frameworks that people have out there and start to understand what are the common threads, where do they diverge. The other big thing that we did is we took a step back and said, what is the difference between like release marketing and a launch? And I think that's another pitfall that a lot of people run into. They're like, especially in SaaS, and especially with the pace of releases. Like at this point, if you're deploying once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, not a week, a day, all of those naturally cannot be considered launches, right? Like in some cases, those are bug fixes. In some cases, they're performance enhancements that don't warrant a whole big announcement.
Change management log.
Yeah, just put it in the change log. And I think this was more common to have to do release marketing when folks were on, data center server deployments, where the release of, 9.1.a.2 was like actually kind of a big deal, right? Like you were going to have all of these mid releases before you got to release 10. But now with continuous deployment, we can't talk about everything. So first step is like, we stepped back and we were like, all right, what are the things that are we going to term as more kind of release marketing versus product launches, and getting alignment on those pillars of, what are the criteria for an actual launch, and then thinking holistically, not just about one channel, one product, one tactic, but really thinking about the impact on our customers, the impact on our business, the impact on our ecosystem. So Atlassian has a lot of channel partners. We have a lot of developers in our marketplace who build on top of our APIs. So even things like, significant updates to our APIs. So we have I guess it would be basically a platform called Forge. And that was a huge launch because it was this massive change to basically make it much easier for developers to build on top of our platform. And so, that would be a perfect example of like, that's a huge change from an ecosystem perspective that will result
Sounds
in
like a tier 1 launch.
Yeah, it was a tier 1 launch. So looking across, the impact of customers, revenue or business impact, partnership or ecosystem changes, and really understanding, like going back to those first principles of what should be in each launch, and then figuring out, how many tiers we actually need to make sure that we're accommodating all of the different types of impacts that we could have. And then I do think at a certain size of company, there does have to be a tops down. You can't do it bottoms up. And I think previously, given Be the Change You Seek, we had tried to do this bottoms up and kind of say like, all right, everybody throw in what you think, right?
Oh,
and at some point,
too many hands.
You do need someone senior enough to say, hey, we've heard all the feedback. Here's the decision-making criteria. Here's what goes under each of those criteria based on, data, history, resources, et cetera. And this is what the tiers are going to be and the decision criteria for those tiers. And then once we got the buy-in for that, then it was much easier to go through and talk through tactics. And again, thinking through the tactics, not just from whatever makes sense today, but the first principles of the tactics. So how much of your audience are you trying to tell this story to? That for a tier 1 launch, for example, right? Like maybe you're doing a bunch of ad campaigns and you're spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, depending on the size of the company, to reach millions of people. If you're doing a tier 4 launch and it's just going to reach a small segment of the audience, those types of paid channels might not make sense. So again, it's less about, do we run ads on LinkedIn or do we run ads on Google? We do ads on both for tier 1. And it's more like,
yeah,
what size of audience are we trying to reach, and what types of resources and channels help you reach that size of audience, right? Or a specific segment.
Let's say, and I know you covered step 1 already with what I'm about to ask, but like, let's say that you were starting at a new company as CMO or head of marketing, or even like head of product marketing, whatever that, like, my point is some kind of like senior leadership type of position where you are the one who has the say in creating these tiers or recreating them. And first you're doing your audit and your team does that audit. When you're doing those things that you mentioned, you talked about impact rate. You talked about customer impact, business impact. Do you set a criteria for each of those, like a hard number based on whatever size of business and size of market? Like, is that part of the criteria that you set for the product roadmap and anything that's coming out of it?
Yes, with some caveats. We actually usually set it more as a range. And part of this dovetails in our case with our go-to-market motions. So obviously it's not fair to compare growth rates or revenue rates from some of our more established products like Jira and Confluence that have been around for
that makes sense.
A decade or 2 decades. Like,
yeah.
Even if something is a 10% increase in the Jira business or the Confluence business, like, that's orders of magnitude of actual dollar impact than something that is a brand new product that just got launched last year, where it's like...
Totally fair.
So we do usually think of it more in terms of range. And then we also think of it in terms of the core go-to-market motion for that product set. So if it's basically, we've historically grown through product-led growth. And so having land products where this is the thing that we know, if people land in these products, they are more likely to stick with us, grow, buy, et cetera, and become a paying customer. And then we know there are expand products where it's like, what's the next best thing to offer them? So we would treat those a little bit different in terms of the number and the impact to make sure that it's matched properly. Otherwise, our new products would basically never get a tier 1 launch because
then it wouldn't
they
be
don't
fair.
have the revenue impact that like Jira and Confluence
that makes
have.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so step 1, do your audit. And I really appreciate the things that you talked about where you're measuring impact across, business, customer, et cetera. So then what's step 2? What's the next thing that a PMM doing this should do?
Yeah. So step 2 is basically aligning across those pillars and the elements that you want to change. So for us, some of the big things that we wanted to consider across our launches included like the change category. So is it very high? It's going to require a lot of people to make a lot of changes, whether that's on the engineering or product side, whether that's on the partner side, whether that's on the pricing side. So AI, for example, there's a number of different pricing models. Most of them are consumption based. That's quite different from the way that most of our other products behave. In some cases, there's licensing, right? So do you do licensing? Do you do consumption-based? We've got some pipelines products that also have that same debate about consumption-based versus license-based or flat rate. So if there's significant pricing changes, that would go in there. And then thinking about the different impacts. So customer impact, company impact, and ecosystem impact. And in our case, that's what we're looking at. And defining what each of those should be. And then basically road showing that around and make sure that you're getting everybody. So again, the ecosystem is one that often gets missed because it tends to sit outside of marketing. Same thing with customer success, particularly in a large org. They tend to sit somewhere else. They either sit in sales or in some cases they might actually sit in the engineering organization. And so the idea that you only share this with basically marketing and product. And it's like, no, you actually need to share this more broadly. Make sure you share it with sales, partnerships, ecosystem, channel, et cetera, to make sure that you're not leaving anybody out. So next step, once you've decided on those pillars is to kind of go through and do the roadshow to make sure that you've got the right criteria and that you haven't missed any significant impact or change levers that, again, it wouldn't occur to someone of like, oh, I need to go talk to the pricing team or the CFO or like the strategy and biz ops team about changing our tiers. And it's like, well, you kind of should because pricing might have a significant impact.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a Captain Obvious question. Why do you have to create the pillars? like for something like creating product launch tiers? Like, where does that help in the establishment of the tiering structure?
Yeah. So it basically keeps everybody honest. There is a difference between the amount of work something takes to make happen internally in terms of building the product and the impact it will have externally. So tech debt is a perfect example. On the product and engineering side, they are always wrestling with where to put tech debt in the backlog. And they never want to put tech debt at the top of the backlog because it doesn't have an impact, right? And it's not sexy, and you don't get to talk about it. Like, you don't get rewarded for reducing tech debt. But the reality is, if you don't reduce the tech debt, things are going to go very badly for you in the future. You have to deal with tech debt. So tech debt is like the perfect example for why you need these pillars, because just because something takes a high effort to do or build doesn't actually mean that it needs to have high effort in terms of public announcements. And so having these pillars helps everyone understand, like, is this a marketing moment, or is this a business foundation moment? Is this a set yourself up for migrations or platform or integration or reduced incidents in the future? Those are actually very different things. And I think that having these pillars in terms of like that shared language and shared definition of what a marketing moment is helps reduce the feeling that just because it took a lot of effort and you didn't get recognized for it externally doesn't mean that the work was not valuable.
Right. I wanted to call that out because I feel like so often that happens, and it's really frustrating when I feel like, oh, great, I have all this work to do, and it's not even going to get all the attention I want it to get.
Right.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, so then moving on, what is step 3 then?
Yeah. So step 3 is go do the roadshow. You have to get the feedback, roll it out. And I think, once you've incorporated that feedback, it's not like go around for 6 months and everyone and their mother gets to tweak it. It's like, no, make sure that everyone understands what's happening. So yeah, do the roadshow, and then looking through the tactics and starting to assign the tactics to the different tiers. And then, making your playbooks in terms of here's the different tactics, here's how we use them, which teams are involved. That doesn't necessarily have to all fit inside your neat little table of like, launch tiers and all of that, but having, in our case, obviously we use Confluence, so we'll have pages with, the different playbooks for the different tiers and kind of who owns what, how to get support, what you can self-serve, and so those are all
amazing
in the tiered framework.
I love that each tier has a playbook. And it's really helpful for larger enterprise-sized companies. It helps to make sure that everybody's approaching it the same way. So I can feel how that would be so helpful. Do you have, as part of the playbook, examples of some of the tactics? When I say examples, like, hey, when we launched product X, this is what it looked like. This is what the tactic thing looked like. Just to kind of set an expectation on like standard of quality.
Yeah, so the good news is we also have a really strong internal blogging culture and a really strong internal Loom recording culture. So it's very common after a launch for somebody to do a write-up. They'll show the creative assets. They'll link to, if it had a blog, if there's press coverage, it'll link to, the press coverage page. There's usually a little Loom that's like, we're super excited about this, how this campaign came to life. Huge shout out to like everyone on the team that did it. Yeah. There's like a nice little round of praise. Yeah, being able to show that. And I think the underlying question, right? The problem is not the tier 1s. It is the tier 4s is always the struggle. So I'll preview a little bit. I know we're going to talk through like more nitty gritty details, but I'll spoil it a little bit.
Let it come.
Yeah. So one of the things that we have done is to empower our PMs in particular to share more on social media about why they're proud of this feature or why they're excited to release this to customers or what they contributed and how they thought that this problem was relevant or interesting or whatever, right? And so we, in a lot of cases, we've got visual libraries or related icons or something like that for each of our product collections. And so if it's a smaller feature that maybe is getting a tier 4 launch, one of those tactics is the team that worked on it, share it on their social media, and then we'll do a little swarm or we'll give them, it could be a selfie with them and their screen being like, it's live, right? Or you move the ticket to done in Jira and it's the GIF, right? And you get a little,
That's really cool.
ready, right? So we give them some ideas. Obviously the quality from a creative perspective is much more variable, but it's more authentic and it feels authentic.
True.
Because they're sharing it on their own. They're saying, I built this and I'm proud of it and here's what I built, right? Yeah. And we do give them some key messages usually to say like, make sure that you call out, here's the problem, make sure you call out whatever it is that you built, whether it's a feature or performance enhancement, whatever. And then, from a CTA perspective, we tell them if you want to say like, yeah, go check it out, let me know what you think, if it's in Jira, Confluence, whatever. And then we say, if you want, do a selfie or do a GIF or something like that to kind of pull this together. So that I think has helped a lot, and gives that sense of like, we're not going to do a whole net new visual library and a whole set of like curated, screenshots and GIFs and demo videos for tier 4. And that's okay. But here's some ideas of what your peers have done in the past to share on their own LinkedIn or to share in the community. Our community members love to have PMs come into the community. And so giving them a little bit of a like prompt of, hey, put this in the community.
That's cool.
That is really helpful for them as well.
And it's really cool that after a launch, certainly a big launch, to do a Loom video to kind of give the shout outs. That's such a good, team camaraderie, feel good thing. I would totally steal that if I were listening right now. So anyway, back to this list. Let me summarize real quick what I think I've heard the steps so far are. So far I heard step 1 is do an audit of the existing processes and what that impact looks like across business, customer, et cetera. And then step 2 was, remind me what step 2 was. Was it the
categories
tiers?
Of impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, categories of impact. Yes. Step 2 is the categories of impact. Step 3 was the cross-functional inputs across your stakeholders. And then is there a step 4?
And then the step 4 was mapping the tactics to here. Yeah.
Yes. Mapping the tactics. That's right. Mapping. And then we're going to get in a little bit more to the playbook too for the smaller roadshows. But then what about step 5?
Yeah. So step 5, per usual in SaaS, we are never done. We have to, iterate on this. One thing that I will say that's a pitfall, it is not uncommon for after a big launch or, any series of launches, then if there's one new tactic or if something didn't go quite right, everybody's like, we need to overhaul the entire framework. And it's like, no, let's pause, right? There's always a hiccup in a launch because
always.
That's how life works. So I would recommend looking at your launch tiers and tactics annually and giving it a refresh. So it's not to overhaul it. And in general, you probably should not significantly change what the categories are. You might change the definition of those categories. So the example of like, if let's say a business explodes in terms of like, it just rockets to the moon and all of a sudden this product line is making a lot of money, maybe it shifts into, again, in our parlance, it would be a land versus an expand product because it's growing so fast. Or maybe we see that this customer segment is particularly sticky. And so it does make sense for us to go ahead and treat something as maybe a tier 2 launch when normally it might be a tier 3 or 4 because the customers are so sticky. Maybe we move this product or this style. Again, AI is a perfect example, right? Like, it's so crazy right now in the market that we tend to treat anything related to AI at a higher tier than it might normally be just because of the market conditions right now, right? Once AI becomes more ubiquitous, it might settle out into a lower tier or, the range of tiers depending on what it is.
Yeah, totally. So the tiering is flexible
right,
based on what the anticipated overall impact to the business could be. Even if you don't have the hard numbers to prove it, there's still conviction there. So things may get bubbled up to higher tiers or lower tiers.
Yeah. And then same thing with the tactics. If we find that a certain tactic is just not working at all, even if we throw tier 1 level resources at it, if it's like this tactic's just not doing great, cool. Take it off or deprioritize it or say, hey, we're only going to do it. Maybe there's a certain tactic that really only works if you invest tier 1 level. And so instead of also doing it at tier 3 and tier 2, we're just going to only put it in tier 1, right? Or new tactics come online that we want to test, cool. It's perfect to test those for tier 4 launches because it gives you something, it gives you enough data. Obviously, PM is very excited because they're like, you're telling me there's 10 tactics in my, that I can do? Great, right? They get very excited. And so, but looking at it more holistically across the tactics and those kinds of things and the market conditions to make sure that the same way you would do with your competitive research or market research or personas, you shouldn't be changing your personas every month, right? You shouldn't be changing your competitive set every month. So you shouldn't be changing your launch tiers and tactics every single month. Look at it annually and just make sure that this is still working. Look at the data, see how the launches have gone across different tiers, and then that will help you adjust as needed.
Got it. So reevaluate. I like that a lot. I want to dig in. You've mentioned blogs a couple times. Maybe I have. I don't know. Blogs have come up. So I want to ask you a question about blogs. So if you were, again, let's just making up a new scenario, and you can give an example from Atlassian if it makes sense to do so. But if you were in a new role, again, rebuilding, and your team was rebuilding the tiering, at what tier would you give a blog to a product release? Or are blogs dead? What do you think?
Oh man, poor blogs.
Or I know. Well, I had a PM team that was obsessed with blogs, and everything needed to have a blog. And I was like, guys, no, not everything needs a blog. But I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So my bigger issue is less about a blog and more about a written asset, right? Some things. Yeah. It's just really hard to explain them in writing. You have to have screenshots. And by the time every other line is a screenshot, make it a freaking carousel, make it a GIF, make it a 1-minute video. Good Lord, quit trying to make fetch happen. So blogs are not dead. There's actually a lot of use in a blog now with LLMs and traditional SEO,
totally.
Right? Having something to reference. If that blog actually contains helpful information, then cool. So that's the first thing is step one, the underlying question is, does this need, what kind of asset, the format does this need? Does it need a long form written content, or does it need a more visual asset? It might need a demo video, whatever. Step two, where does the audience spend time, and who will actually be referencing this thing? So for us, our community is well trafficked. And so actually community posts for some of these tier 4 and tier 3 launches are really useful from a community perspective because it's hitting a very specific subset of the audience. Mm-hmm. We have community groups for those people. So go talk to the people who are going to nerd out with you about this feature. So even if you're doing a written asset, it might be better to have it be, short form or long form in the community. And so a blog is kind of a specific format in a specific place. It's basically a long form piece of content on the company website is effectively what it is. But a short form written asset in the community might actually be perfect for the audience that you're trying to reach. The other thing that tends to happen, maybe it's kind of hard to understand or hard to implement this feature. And so the community allows people to ask questions. Blogs generally, yes, they can have comments, but blogs are usually a one-way communication. So that's another question. Do you need a two-way communication in this? Okay.
That's a good point.
Maybe it makes more sense to do a LinkedIn post or an Ask Me Anything on Reddit or a community post than it does to do basically a one-way broadcast blog. The Atlassian blog doesn't have comments. So if you want feedback, maybe this is actually an alpha or a beta release and you're looking for feedback. The Atlassian blog is not the right place to get feedback because there's no comments.
Right.
Put it in the community and ask for the community feedback, right? So I think the question is less to your point of these PMs were insistent that everything needs to be a blog. I think it sounds like they're falling prey to a pitfall of conflating a channel, a format, and a checklist of activity instead of understanding, again, what is the goal? Who is the audience? How is the information best served? Blogs are not dead. I think but the question of which tier deserves a blog? I'm well, I actually can't answer that because I think in general, we do include blogs for tier 1 and tier 2, and then tiers 3 and tier 4, we basically depend. It kind of depends.
It depends.
The other thing too, it might be that, and this is something, again, spoiler alert for the playbook, but
spoiler alert,
bundling a couple of the tier 4 launches, if you wait and you bundle them together into a single marketing moment, that could up-level them into a tier 3 launch. So we might do a feature roundup from the last quarter, or like 20 things you didn't know you could do in the product. And that might get a blog, versus if we had just done each individual thing. It's like, well, one thing you can do in Confluence, like that's not impressive.
Yeah.
Like, even 3 things you didn't know you could do. Like, why would that be a blog versus 10 things, 20 things, or like everything that shipped last quarter might have enough substance for a longer form written asset.
Yeah. I just want to validate some things you've been saying with examples that I'm aware of. So my own example is that I've done the clustering of small releases around a theme. We've done that at Cisco a lot, so that we do end up having a blog, but it's around a specific like thought leadership theme that we're trying to reinforce for the company. And then it's funny that you mentioned Reddit and the use of communities, because my very first episode of this podcast that I ever released was with a product marketing leader from Reddit. And that's exactly what she talked about. And she talked about how she leveraged, it was for like a small-ish, like not a tier 1, but like, you know, a meaningful, but like it wasn't a tier 1 or 2, but it was still like a meaningful update. And they launched, of course, through the Reddit community, and Reddit itself as the entity wasn't the voice of the release. The customers were. So they actually picked like quote unquote influencers in the Reddit community to give the update. And then they had like Reddit PMs go in and being kind of like the commenters, you know, for not necessarily an MA, but anyway, engagement to kind of ask or point to more technical info as needed. But I just wanted to reinforce a lot of what you're saying. Like, other like rockstar PMMs are doing that.
Oh, that's very cool. And we do talk about that in terms of, does something get potentially, you know, influencers or a customer story or customer reference, or like, you know, UGC content, and how do we think about doing that in our community champions? So we do talk through that as well.
Yeah. Okay. And one other thing you mentioned, so you talked about AI, but because you mentioned it, it reminded me, if you were going to like recreate like a tiering structure, or if you were trying to figure out like, you know, building a product launch or something, you know, how does AI play a role in your planning, shaping strategy and all of that from a PMM's perspective?
So there's a couple ways you can do this. One, if you don't have the tiers, right, you can basically get it to help you with a draft. So show it past launches, show it past tactics, show it past data, and say, given all of this, I think we need, and 4 tiers tends to feel good. Most of the people that I've talked to, they're like, 4 tiers.
It's usually 4.
For whatever reason, 4 seems to be like the right amount. To anyone listening, they're going to be like, I heard that Atlassian, you must use 4 tiers. I'm like, I'm not saying you must. I'm just saying
no, wait.
4 seems to be a good amount. So maybe tell it, right? Like, I think it should be 4 tiers, you know, given all of this data about past launches, help me build a framework. And so it can actually help you build out kind of that criteria. Or if you say, here's the criteria I have, given all of this past stuff that we've done, what tactics would you map into each of these tiers? And it can help you map those tactics. So that's one way it can help you build the framework. The other way it can help you build it, and this is something that like I want to start testing more, and I no longer sit directly in PMM, so I'm less influential in choosing which tier something goes into, but now I sit on the demand gen side and kind of lifecycle side. So I'm like pairing with product marketing in terms of, okay, you're doing a tier 1 launch, here's all the tactics, or we're doing a tier 4 launch, right? But one thing that I think would be super interesting, and I'm biased, I would use like basically build a Rovo agent that you tell it, here's what I'm doing, here's all the details of like what this launch is, tell me which tier it is, and then generate the associated work back plan, right? So we also have in each tier basically like the minimum number of advance notice. Is it months? Is it weeks? Is it days? Whatever. So getting it to basically build out a page that's a work back to say, okay, we want to, we have our big conference. It's called Team 26 is happening in May. It is often common for us to GA or make big announcements at team. And so now is kind of the time where we're starting to look through the roadmap and saying like, what will be announced?
What's the story?
Team? Like,
What's
what
the
are we
big
doing,
thing?
right?
Yeah.
So putting all of that in, like now we're in January, and saying, give me a work back plan for an announcement, basically by, team is like the second week of May. So we say, last week of April, give us a little bit of buffer, right? But to get it to build out the project plan of like, okay, this is when you need to start talking to press if it's a tier 1 launch, because they have to get the story in, you have to pitch them and blah, 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 right? Like this is when creative needs to start working on if it's going to require a whole new visual library, or, okay, we need screenshots because this is going in the keynote for team. You got to do the work back plan. Well, when are you going to have product ready to get your screens to feed into the keynote that has to go to design, right? Like, so this idea that, oh, it's totally fine, we can hit go live on the product on April 15th or April 30th and like, it's done in time. No, we need screens, and like we need a demo. Okay. What level of dummy information needs to be in the demo environment for it to actually populate? This is particularly true, like data or analytics things. Anything that's doing anything with data, you have to have dummy in there.
Establish the data.
Populate the data environment, right? So like, or the demo environment. So getting it to pull together that work back plan, and then someone more capable than me can probably do this. I need to go. I'm talking to our program managers about it because I'm like, guys, I have this vision, but the vision is basically now with Rovo, get it to write the initial announcement blog, because they all tend to have a format, right? Like there's maybe a couple of templates for these things.
Yeah.
Tell it, right template for the tier, draft the initial thing for me based on
here's the messaging. Like you have everything.
Yeah. And like draft, and then once you have that, then you can use that and you can say, okay, pull out some social posts for our execs or for PMs or for product marketers, whoever, right? So that's the big thing that I'm like, I don't know if it's really a full-on like orchestrate it where the agents basically you feed it once and the agents orchestrate it, or if you do it at each step and then you use the combination of agents and like chat and generative AI to pull it together. But I'm like, there's a master plan in here, and obviously we're doing some of this
Something
already,
is there.
But the master like end-to-end plan of it, that to me is like the grand vision, but I haven't yet executed. I should ask around Atlassian to see if somebody else has, but
I'm really excited because I have an episode coming out that's on this very similar topic.
Oh,
like
that's
very,
perfect.
very similar. It's not like launch related, but it's super similar topic. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, but basically going both ways of like,
what
tier should this be? Or it is this tier, therefore make me a work back plan or help me start generating, assets or templates.
I love it. Okay, and I know you've spoiled a little bit, but in a good way, all of or given some sneak previews of your tier 4 playbook, launch playbook. But tell us more about it. What are the tactics, and how do I make sure my tier 4 launch is successful, my PMs are happy, and the product is, getting the attention it deserves?
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, empowering the employees to share themselves. So making sure that we do have kind of, the features aligned to that standard message house and aligned to the bigger product messaging. That's huge. That way they feel confident when they go create their own copy or create their own creative assets in terms of, videos, demos, etc. And then we do curate some key assets. So if we know we need, let's say we're going to update the product tour with some product screenshots, great. Make sure that those are obviously available to anyone who wants to share those on social, and that they've got, basically they're in a demo environment so that it's not dummy data, so that that's shareable. So that's the first thing. And then drafting off of that, we swarm on personal posts. So basically on the launch day, when the person shares, so let's say I'm the PM, when I share on my LinkedIn, we've got you and all of my peers and all of my PMM peers on deck to basically go comment, engage, to help kind of juice that from an algorithm standpoint. And then we also give a heads up to our organic social team to engage from the Atlassian handle. So you came from Cisco,
that's really
Cisco
nice.
probably has however many
Totally.
millions of
Same thing.
followers,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Atlassian, I think, has
Right.
like 2 million followers. So if the Atlassian handle engages on your post, it skyrockets
It's a big deal.
reach, right?
Yeah.
And that's an easy thing for the organic social team. They're like, cool, you want us to just like leave a comment to say congrats on the launch? Like, we could do that, you want us to just like the post? Happy to do that, right? And that's a much lighter lift and a much lower ask than saying, we need a post every day about this new feature on the Atlassian handle. Like, I'm sorry, they
Right.
do not.
Especially when they're getting those requests from like 20 other teams.
Exactly. And they've got their own whole social first or social only strategy that they have to deal with. And they have to serve, talent needs and stakeholder needs and investor needs and all the things, right? So that's a much easier entry point, particularly for, we call them, I called it a micro launch. That's the other nice thing. Like, don't call it a tier 4, call it a micro launch. And it's like, oh yeah, it has launch in the name, right? So that's another tactic that has helped really boost those things. And then the other thing that we've done is kind of across the business is created ongoing engagement for places where people can plug in. So one of my colleagues actually pioneered this Demo Den series, and then I kind of helped scale it across a couple of other teams. But the Demo Den, it's basically usually happens at a monthly cadence, and it's a short video that a PM, product designer, or engineer, basically somebody who is in kind of the ICP, records a video, and they're only usually about 5 minutes long, but that's a really easy way if you get something that would be in that tier 4 to be like, oh, perfect. We'll add you to the Demo Den calendar, and it's close enough in most cases that, it's not like, okay, in 6 months you get to talk about this.
Yeah.
Like, oh, next month, we'd love to have you. And because that happens so frequently, we constantly need content. And so it's like perfect to be able to slot in.
Yeah.
We do a number of like community roundups or community series. And so being able to show that and be like, oh my gosh, this would be perfect for community. We pair those demo dens with an Ask Me Anything. And then basically
That's
the
so
PMs
cool.
will come back for like 24 hours to answer questions. So
Yeah.
that level of like constant engagement is a nice, like, oh, your PMM might actually have a whole community series planned. And because they're constantly wanting to post something in community, like roughly once a month, they're constantly looking for contributors. And so having those ongoing touch points, if you've got a newsletter and there's always a spot for like the demo of the month or like feature of the month, that's an easy way to be like, oh, we need something for this slot. And then obviously, if we're not getting an inbound request from PM, we can then put it out there to be like, hey guys, we have a lot of opportunities. What are you interested in featuring? And then somebody is like, I have this thing coming out. And so it's also a way to proactively see the roadmap and what's coming for some of those things that might be more tier 4.
And some of those PMs who hold the roadmap so close to their chest, it's hard to get access to it.
But then you tell them we have this opportunity to promote, and they're like, oh,
they're
wow,
like,
I got to raise my hand for that. And you're like, well, we need
That's
to
a
copy
really
the
good
screenshot of the
idea.
CTA, right?
Yes. So PMMs in your next one-on-one or like monthly, weekly, whatever PMM check-in, like tell them what opportunities are coming up so you can get access to the roadmap.
Yeah.
A question about Demo Den for you is that it sounds like I'm just confirming that concept. Is the audience like existing customers who are in the community? Is it external? Can anyone, like, I'm not a community member, can I go and like look up Demo Den, or like, is it internal? Like, who's the audience?
Yeah, it's generally for a broad audience. You don't have to be an existing user. One fascinating thing, and this is like a whole conversation from a strategy perspective about our community, you can read in the community without joining, but if you want to participate in the community, then you have to join. So that's the other nice thing.
I love that.
We put the demo dens on YouTube, and then we also embed those videos directly in the community with, frequently asked questions or whatever. So like you could still read all of the questions and answers and watch the video. And then we cross-link those. So if you want to see more demo dens, cool, pop over to YouTube. Here's the playlist. Or from the YouTube playlist, if you have questions, pop over to the community. We'd love to hear from you. And then obviously we've got product tour links as relevant in both of those places.
I feel like both of these tactics, right? Like the Demo Den, plus the community, and all of the tactics with the social swarming. I feel like PMs who are tend to be more junior PMs who have the smaller releases. I feel like those are tactics that would really bring them a sense of pride and feel like they're getting a good amount of support from PMM.
Yeah.
So curious.
Yeah.
Now, Ashley, if you had, if a PMM came to you and said, like, I'm so inspired by the micro launch strategy and the tiering structure, I'm working on it now, I'm building this out in my role. Like, what advice do you have to that PMM who's working on it?
Yeah. Biggest pitfall I see when people are like, could you review this thing? Like, I've built it and can you review it? Do you have any feedback? Biggest pitfall that I see is that it's often too focused on tactics. It's like this huge checklist of tactics, and frequently each tier just gets more of the tactics. And so like all the tiers get all the tactics, they just get more of them. So a tier 1 gets 10 blogs, a tier 2 gets 5 blogs, a tier 3 gets 2 blogs, and a tier 1 gets, or a tier 4 gets 1 blog. And I'm like, no. Not all tiers get all tactics. Like, be strategic about the tactics mapping to the tiers. So that's the biggest thing I see, is that a lot of the times the way they're basically scaling the tiers is they're just adding more of all the activities instead of being strategic about the activities. So it's not to say that we don't do the individual posts and the swarming and all of that stuff in a tier 1 stance, but for tier 1, we're likely going to have someone from the C-suite or, a VP or above being the person making the announcement. We're likely going to do a thought leader ad or boost their post from a paid perspective. So like, we don't actually need all the employees to go like that post. I mean, it's great if they do, and obviously we share it and all that, but like, we're going to make sure that post gets seen. Like, we're going to put it on already, right? Versus the reason that you need all the free promotion and free engagement at the tier 4 is because it doesn't have any paid behind it, right? And even for some of the tier 1 launches, right, we might not actually put that in community because it's so broad and we have so many other touch points. We've got a webinar, we've got a keynote, we've got a breakout session, we've got 5 press articles. We might have 3 blogs, at different depths for this thing. So we might not actually put that in community for like months until all the tier 4 stuff starts coming in that relates to the tier 1. And then we can cross-link back to, if you remember, we announced this huge thing back at Team 25. And we're super excited to share. We've got 20 other awesome things for you. Or we've released 5 additional things. That then goes to the community and references the tier 1, right?
Yep.
So the relationship, a tier 1 launch tends to kick off a tier 2 and a tier 3 and multiple tier 4 over the next 6 months, right? So you should necessarily have different tactics, not just different quantities in your tiers.
Right. I love that you mentioned that, because there's something to say about when you kick off at tier 1, and then, as you said, it kind of sets off this cascade of like tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, et cetera. All of that should be mirroring the narrative that you're trying to tell for the company's vision, the impact, et cetera. And so when you're being strategic about building out those tiers and thinking through the tactics, and I think you said this earlier, but it's worth saying again, like, you should be thinking about impact over like volume for what those tactics look like for each of the tiers.
Correct. And matching each of those metrics and impact with the intent. So if something, and this is like another perfect example, right? Like the launch of a premium version of your product or an enterprise version of your product. It's quite common now to have different tiers. You have the free tier, standard, premium, and then like enterprise, super premium, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, you wouldn't go to the enterprise tier unless you are already a premium user, right? Like enterprise tends to include the feature set of premium at scale. So it's got the user gates and the feature gates at scale. So like, it doesn't make sense for you to measure net new logos of the announcement of enterprise when realistically most people are probably going to be premium users first or even standard users first. Like very few companies, especially if it's like kind of the first launch of this are going to land in an enterprise version of the product versus a standard or premium version. So looking at expansion, looking at existing customers is likely going to be the more relevant metric, not net new logos. And same thing for like a tier 4 launch. If you can only use these features if you are an existing customer, or if it's a paid feature, you shouldn't necessarily be looking at like net new MAU as the key indicator if they have to pay you first to get access to it, right? So if you want to look at increase in MAU, but you have to be a paying customer to get access to the feature, then you're naturally constrained into the MAU number, right? So like you shouldn't use the MAU benchmark for a product at the free tier if you have to be a paying customer to get access to this feature, right? And again, when I say it, everyone's like, well, duh. But again, when you get into these conversations and you have both, and I think this is a struggle for both PM and PMMs. Everybody wants to show whatever the biggest possible impact could be. So of course, you want to set that benchmark as like, whatever the new free feature is, for free users, like, of course the MAU is going to skyrocket. And of course you want to say this is like, 1 million MAU potential.
I know.
Well, is it though? Right? Like, let's make sure. So, again, when I say these things in this context and in theory and how it should be, of course, everyone's like, oh, 100%. I know how these conversations go when you actually get in a room and like, And obviously on either sales or leadership side, they're like, are you sure it couldn't be this much pipeline? Are you sure it couldn't be this much MAU? Are you sure it couldn't be this many seats, right? Mm-hmm. And you start to be like, yeah, this is an amazing thing. It could be. And you're like, okay. So.
Right. Yeah, well, we got carried away with ourselves there. Okay, well, this was so helpful. I love the micro launch playbook for our tier 4 smaller releases, and just the way that you set up and the team at Atlassian set up the tiering with the tactics and the categories and getting feedback and your tips to always be reevaluating is so helpful. So thank you so much for guiding us through your case study.
Yeah.
So now I want to switch gears and get into the next segment of our show, the messaging critique.
Yeah.
This is where we as product marketing experts get to analyze real world messaging. And the fun part is, Ashley, as my guest, you get to pick the company that we're looking at today. So before we get started, just to share some ground rules for anyone who may be new to this podcast and new to this segment of the show, we're picking a company that we are somewhat familiar with the context and the customers for. Wouldn't be fair to critique messaging on a company that we didn't understand the audience. And Ashley, you're going to walk through what you're loving about the messaging, what you think the PMM should have done differently, and maybe iterate and come up with some creative ideas for how they can take their story to the next level. So without further ado, tell us the company that you would like to critique today.
Yeah. So I am doing a little bit of a different play on this segment. So I actually kind of criticized some messaging from a company. The company is Contentstack. They are a content management system. We'll actually need to pop over to their website to see what they're saying about themselves now. A couple months ago, they had a huge billboard on 101. I live in the Bay Area, so I was driving, tons of tech billboards. And I would have to go back and look at my post, but it basically said something about like, what if AI could do this for you? And I was like, how would AI do this for me, right? And so I went to the website and it was completely disconnected. And so I posted about that on LinkedIn and said, the billboard and the website were very disconnected, and I struggled to connect it. And their CMO actually reached out to me and was like, I'm pretty sure you're talking about us. And actually, we've been struggling with the messaging, so your feedback is super helpful. Within like 8 hours, they got new messaging that was much better up on their website. He actually publicly came into the comments and said, "Hey guys, it's me." I appreciate the anonymous call out, but like I'm gonna publicly say like, thanks for the feedback. Here's what we have put together. Would love for you guys to take a look at what we've got. And that response time, the openness to feedback. Listen, I mean, I am the ICP, my audience is the ICP. And so he looked through those comments and was like, oh no, we did not do good, right? And then the fact that we were able to get it swapped within like a day. So yeah,
that's really impressive response rate, especially for a CMO. I feel like CMOs are just usually, they think they're too busy to do anything like engage on a LinkedIn comment. So that's really cool.
That change went from gain your experience edge. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And then they shifted it to be the first AI-powered CMS platform. So CMS stands for Content Management System, basically the back end of your website.
That is way better than, I'm sorry, what was the original one?
The other one was Gain Your Experience Edge.
Gain Your Experience Edge. Yes. And I know you mentioned this already. What did the billboard say?
The billboard said, want to publish content 90% faster? Yeah, you can do that. And then when I went to the website, it said Gain Your Experience Edge as like the top headline.
Oh, that's disappointing.
It was quite disconnected, right? But now if you see, want to publish content 90% faster, yeah, you can do that. And then you land on the website and it says the first AI-powered CMS platform. That's connected. So now I'm curious to see what they currently have. Let's go over to the website.
I just went there. So hopefully I didn't click on an ad. It's so frustrating when you click on the ad and then it gives you you get a landing page, not the actual homepage.
Yeah.
And with a caveat that like PMMs sometimes don't have input on what goes on the homepage.
Right.
They should, but sometimes they don't. Okay, so I'm at contentstack.com.
Yes.
And what I see is a carousel as the hero image, or as kind of like the hero section.
Yeah.
And there are huge letters, and it says the world's best digital experiences start here.
The thing that also pulls my eye is the animation directly above where it says content, data, and then adaptive DXP. So I don't actually know what adaptive DXP is. I assume it's basically like dynamic digital experience. I have enough knowledge of this space that I can make that leap. So I actually think this is great. And I think that like where it talks about, it's like the adaptive digital experience era. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. As soon as I scroll down, it basically tells me what that top layer is. And then as I scroll down, seeing it's a headless CMS, which I know what that is. I'm adjacent to the ICP, so I know, with real-time customer analytics. Okay, that's cool. To improve the way you understand your audiences and deliver content to them. So it's branded its best, faster, smarter, and always personal. So this basically, to me, says I can do like dynamic, personalized journeys on my website for people. For the audience. That's what I'm interpreting from this. And then obviously as I scroll down, I'm like, all right, let's see, right? And it's giving me, some highly personalized data and automation, delivering the right message in the right place, right? Like that all dovetails like it should. So I think this actually looks really good. I should send a note to the CMO to be like, hey,
you should
another shout out. And now I'm like, I think that this is super cool, right? The other interesting thing for them, as I mentioned, on one hand, I'm an ICP in the sense that I am a stakeholder into these. I have to use this once it gets chosen. I am not the ICP. I'm not actually the economic buyer for this decision, right? But I work very closely with the person who is. And so
an influencer.
I know enough. And then I have to use it. Basically, if she goes and looks at this, she'll know exactly what all this is. And she'll go and vet if it works. The way she's going to vet if it's going to work is she's going to come talk to me and be like, here's the mock-up, here's the requirements, here's what we would want you to do to populate this. Can you do it? Are you willing to do it? Does this make sense to your team, right? So it's super interesting because I'm kind of an adjacent ICP for them. I'm more of a deal breaker than a deal maker, but I'm highly connected to the deal maker.
It's pretty important being a deal breaker.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that I'm like, oh, I know what this is, or like, oh, this catches my eye, or like, oh, these are connected, in contrast to kind of the initial billboard and messaging that they had where it was so disconnected. Like, I'm very pleased to see that it is quite connected and they are using the right jargon to signal to their ICP that they are actually selling to someone who is quite sophisticated. This is not, it's not Wix, it's not Squarespace, right? Where it's like, DIY, you have no idea what you're doing. No worries for you. Like they're actually using jargon in a strategic way to show that they are attracting a sophisticated buyer. And again, my colleague, if I showed her this, she'd be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what all this is, right? So I actually think it's really good.
I really like their storytelling. I think they've done a really good job. Even with their CTAs are really good. They're not generic. They feel like I can sense like the attitude and like to your point, like that they're talking to a sophisticated buyer.
Yeah.
So, and I can feel that. I like that they put like, and I know that again, this is less PMM, but focus, but I like that they have some product, little GIFs and animations in there. I think that's really helpful. Like they have the little chat function GIF that pops up or animation pop up. That's really helpful in providing context, which is so funny because their whole point is that they're providing context.
Right. So meta.
Right. Yeah. My one little like critique, and this is less on the PMM and more for the copy itself, is leaving something to be desired, but that's being really nitpicky. Like, for example, like unlock your future, like seamlessly integrate, blah, blah, da, 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 da. Like, again, this is really, really, really nitpicky. I just prefer to avoid that type of copy, but that's less of a PMM's job.
Funny enough, because I agree with you. I don't think that one's as strong, but the third one in the series that says if you can't see them, you can't serve them.
I really like that
adaptive personalization, like that. Yeah. That's like spot on, right? So it's
really good. I'm glad you called that one out because I specifically really liked that one. I felt like that was a powerful statement. I almost wish, I get why they have to have the one that they have at the top. I get why they have to have it at the top, but that one that's buried on the third image of the carousel here, I wish it was more front and center because it did feel there's some power in that statement.
Yeah.
So I totally get it.
I do wonder though, if the concern is that if that was first, you might think that their competitive set is like 6 Sense or like demand base or like Bombora, like that
Intensify, like right,
or like a Zoom Info or something, right?
Yep.
So making sure that they were in the right competitive set. So like again, these are all the questions, and to your point, that it's not fair to critique messaging when you are not the ICP or you are not in the industry. Now that I sit on the demand gen side, I know that whole see them serve them could accidentally put them in the wrong category, right?
So
but you, from a PMM perspective, don't generally deal with those tools.
That. Yes.
So you wouldn't see that as potentially putting them in the wrong product category, right? Competitive set. So it's super interesting in terms of like, depending on which lens you're taking. If I take a PMM lens to it from a messaging and copywriting or, flow standpoint versus if I'm taking sitting in my current role on a demand gen side.
Right. You're right.
A different lens, right?
I stand corrected, and I reiterate then or reaffirm my strong storytelling.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty solid. Yeah. Okay. Any last maybe just creative ideas or thoughts that you have for the Contentstack PMMs? How can they take this storytelling? It's super powerful. They've obviously done a really great job. How can they take it to the next level?
Yeah. So one of the things they have on here, which is super cool in terms of the digital experiences, they have an example from Elements Athletics, and the imagery is really powerful. It looks like it's an athletic brand. Yeah, they sell clothes.
Yeah.
And they are doing a lot to show how this shows up on mobile or how this kind of shows up in a dashboard and what all of this does. It feels like there could be some really interesting, basically taking some of that imagery and turning it into Instagram Reels or TikTok videos or LinkedIn Lives, right? The imagery is really cool. The GIFs are really cool. And so it feels like there's, and maybe they are, I haven't gone and looked at their social, right? But there feels like there could be some really interesting things where they do those as standalone social posts. The other thing that they could do that's interesting, if they were to do some creator collabs, they already have really good animations and screenshots. And so
Yeah.
there could be some really interesting like creator brand collabs. Internal influencers also like having some of their PMs or having the product designer share kind of like the process, how they paired with like a motion graphics artist or an animator to pull those things together, right? Like they have some really cool elements on the site that I think how they get those to show up properly is actually indicative of how I assume their platform, they're using Contentstack for their website. So like that level of, animations, GIFs, etc., could actually be a really great use case for almost like a content stack on Contentstack.
That is so cool.
Media.
Yeah.
So that's a one thought for them. And again, maybe they're doing that. I need to go look at their social to see if they are. But
they could be. If not, it's a fun, story that they could run across different channels.
Yeah.
So fun. Okay, what a great critique. Shout out to Contentstack PMM team. Really strong storytelling. We like what we see.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that I like to make space for on this podcast is a moment of gratitude, because in product marketing, none of us ever get to where we are alone. We're always learning from each other and stealing each other's playbooks and growing, and we're all better for it. So I wanted to wrap up and say a genuine thank you, Ashley, to you for being so generous with your time and your insights and coming on and walking us through your both guidance on how to create product tiering and then also how to do the micro launches for like smaller tier 4 releases. Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful to the PMM community.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me and asking all the hard questions and diving deep, and super fun.
It's so fun. And would love to turn it around to you. Are there any PMMs that you want to give a shout out to who have brought you to where you are today? You're obviously super accomplished marketing leader, but how did you get here? Who are the PMMs or marketers who've helped you get here?
Yeah, I will shout out two awesome PMMs. They are both quite prolific on LinkedIn, so I'm sure they get shout outs all the time. But Mary Sheehan and Hattie the PMM, both of them, I learn a ton from them in terms of, again, if you want more like the goat of product launches. Mary Sheehan wrote the Pocket Guide to Product Launches. Like, she's got a whole book on this, so tons of great tactics there. And then obviously Hattie runs a great community of PMMs and shares a lot about dealing with some of the kind of friction that we deal with when we're working through things from a cross-team perspective.
Totally. Yeah, I'm so honored to say that Hattie has been a guest on the show, and her insights are also just invaluable to the PMM community. And Mary, I think maybe this is my shout out. Like, we got to get Mary on here.
Yeah. Oh, Mary's great. You definitely need to talk to Mary.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. This was a lot of fun, and we're so lucky to have you. One last question for you. Where can my guests reach out to, or my listeners reach out to you if they want to learn more? Is it best to just find you on LinkedIn?
Yep. LinkedIn is the place. I tend to be quite prolific and engaging frequently there.
Because you're so generous with all your insights, so we can keep learning more by following Ashley. I love it. All right. Thank you again, Ashley. And thank you, PMM listeners, for coming on this adventure with us today. I hope this episode leaves you with inspiration to take in the next step of your own journey.